Have you ever wondered who first inhabited the lands of Chile before the Spanish conquest? Long before the Spanish set foot on Chilean soil, the region was rich with vibrant indigenous cultures. The Mapuche, Aymara, and Diaguita peoples were among the first to call these lands home. They were not just inhabitants, but stewards of the land, each leaving an indelible mark on the country's earliest history. Take the Mapuche, for instance. Known for their distinctive silverwork, they were also fierce warriors, defending their territories with unwavering resilience. Meanwhile, the Aymara, inhabiting the Andean highlands, developed advanced agricultural techniques that allowed them to thrive in this harsh environment. The Diaguita, on the other hand, were skilled potters and weavers, their intricate designs reflecting a rich artistic tradition. These indigenous cultures contributed significantly to art, agriculture, and society, setting the foundation for what would later become the diverse and complex nation of Chile. Now, let's dive into the era of the Spanish conquest. In the 16th century, Spain, hungry for new lands and wealth, turned its eyes towards Chile. Led by the ambitious Pedro de Valdivia, the Spanish conquest of Chile began. Valdivia, a former lieutenant of the infamous conquistador Francisco Pizarro, established the city of Santiago in 1541, marking the beginning of Spanish colonial rule in the region. This era was characterized by the establishment of colonial settlements and the exploitation of indigenous labor and resources. The Spanish introduced their language, religion, and customs, forever altering the cultural landscape of Chile. They exploited the indigenous peoples for labor, forcing them to work in harsh conditions in mines and plantations. The wealth of Chile, including its gold and silver, was shipped back to Spain, fueling the Spanish economy while depleting the resources of Chile. This period marked a significant shift in the history and culture of Chile. But what happened when the indigenous people resisted the Spanish rule? In the 16th century, the Arauco War broke out, marking one of the longest-running conflicts in Latin American history. This war wasn't just another conquest, it was a fierce resistance led by the Mapuche people against Spanish colonists. The Mapuche, a warrior society, fought valiantly, refusing to bow down to foreign domination. Their resilience was nothing short of extraordinary, and their resistance was a testament to their indomitable spirit. They were determined to protect their land, their culture, their way of life, from being erased by the Spanish colonists. Even though vastly outnumbered and outgunned, the Mapuche people held their ground for centuries, using their knowledge of the land and guerrilla warfare tactics to their advantage. This resistance, this refusal to be subdued, played a pivotal role in shaping the history of Chile. It's a story of courage, of resilience, of a people's fight for their freedom. This resistance played a significant role in shaping Chile's history. So, how did Chile gain its independence from Spanish rule? It was a complex and tumultuous process, deeply rooted in the broader context of Latin American revolutions. The yearning for autonomy began to simmer in the early 19th century, fueled by Enlightenment ideas and the political instability in Spain. Two key figures emerged in this struggle: Bernardo O'Higgins and José de San Martin, who would become known as the liberators of Chile. O'Higgins, a Chilean-born military leader, and San Martin, an Argentine general, joined forces to lead a successful campaign against the Spanish forces. Their efforts culminated in a pivotal moment on September 18, 1810, when a national junta was established in the capital city of Santiago. This junta effectively wrestled control from the Spanish, marking a significant shift towards autonomy. Although it would take another 8 years of warfare to fully secure their independence, September 18th is celebrated as Chile's Independence Day. This marked the birth of Chile as an independent nation. But did independence mean peace for Chile? Not quite. No sooner had the dust of revolution settled than another conflict erupted, the War of the Pacific. From 1879 to 1884, Chile found itself embroiled in a bitter struggle with Peru and Bolivia. The bone of contention? The Atacama Desert. Now this might seem odd. After all, what value does a desert hold? But the Atacama was no ordinary wasteland. Beneath its barren surface lay a treasure trove of nitrates, a valuable resource in the late 19th century. Both nations coveted this mineral wealth, leading to a fierce and bloody conflict. Chile emerged victorious, annexing significant territories from both Peru and Bolivia. These territorial gains included the nitrate-rich Atacama Desert, which allowed Chile to prosper economically. The War of the Pacific was more than a mere skirmish over resources. It was a transformative event that significantly shaped the boundaries and geopolitics of Chile. What happened when power got concentrated in the hands of a few? Well, let's dive into the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a period marked by the rise of the oligarchy in Chile. The country's political and economic landscape was dominated by a small, privileged elite who consolidated their power and wealth. This oligarchic class was built on the back of mining and agriculture, industries that experienced a boom due to export-led economic growth. But, as the oligarchy's wealth grew, so too did the social disparities. As the rich reveled in their prosperity, the poor struggled with poverty, limited opportunities, and social inequality. This was a time when the gap between the haves and the have-nots became more apparent than ever. The oligarchy's rise wasn't just about economic growth. It was about a society divided along lines of wealth and power. This period highlighted the growing divide between the rich and the poor. So, how did Chile experience its first taste of socialism? In the early 70s, Salvador Allende, a physician and politician, rose to power as Chile's first democratically elected socialist president. Allende's term was characterized by his ambitious socialist policies. He nationalized key industries, including copper mining, and implemented wide-ranging social reforms. His government aimed to redistribute wealth and build a more equal society. However, Allende's presidency was not without controversy. His policies led to political polarization, with critics accusing him of undermining Chile's economy and democratic institutions. This growing divide set the stage for one of the most dramatic episodes in Chile's history, the 1973 coup d'état. This military coup, led by General Augusto Pinochet, abruptly ended Allende's presidency, marking a dark turn towards dictatorship. This era was a turning point in Chile's political history. The presidency of Salvador Allende remains a potent symbol of the possibilities and perils of socialist governance in Latin America. What happened when a military dictatorship took over? On September 11, 1973, General Augusto Pinochet led a military coup that ousted Chile's democratically elected socialist president, Salvador Allende. This marked the beginning of a 17-year-long military dictatorship, characterized by severe human rights abuses, including widespread torture, arbitrary detention, and forced disappearances. The Pinochet regime was also notable for its economic policies, which were heavily influenced by neoliberalism. Pinochet enacted drastic free market reforms, deregulating and privatizing much of Chile's economy. These measures, while praised by some for spurring economic growth, also led to significant income inequality and social unrest. The Pinochet era was a time of profound change for Chile, a period marked by repression and economic transformation. It's a chapter in Chile's history that continues to cast a long shadow over the country's present. This period left a profound impact on Chile's political and social landscape. How did Chile transition back to democracy? Now that's quite the story. After nearly 2 decades of military rule under General Augusto Pinochet, Chile began a pivotal journey towards democracy in the late 1980s. A national plebiscite was held in October 1988, where the Chilean people were asked a simple yet profound question: should Pinochet stay in power for another 8 years or not? The majority vote was a resounding no, marking the end of Pinochet's rule and paving the way for democratic elections. The transition was not without its challenges, but the nation pressed on. In 1990, Patricio Aylwin was elected as president, marking a triumphant return to civilian government. His administration was tasked with the colossal job of healing a nation scarred by years of dictatorship and establishing a solid foundation for democracy. The road was long and winding, but Chile persevered. This marked the beginning of a new era of democratic governance in Chile. But how have the people of Chile voiced their demands for change? Let's explore the recent surge of social movements and protests. From the bustling streets of Santiago to the remote corners of Patagonia, the voices of dissent have echoed loud and clear. Young students, brandishing signs and slogans, have taken to the streets, demanding a more equitable education system. They want an end to the high costs and inequalities that plague their pursuit of knowledge. Parallel to this, indigenous rights movements have gained momentum. The Mapuche and other indigenous communities are standing up for their ancestral lands and cultural rights, pushing back against centuries of marginalization. Then we have the environmental activists, who are fighting to protect Chile's diverse ecosystems from the threats of deforestation, pollution, and climate change. Their protests underscore the urgent need to balance economic growth with environmental sustainability. These movements show the active role of the Chilean people in shaping their country's future. So, what challenges is Chile facing today? In contemporary Chile, the nation grapples with a range of complex issues. Income inequality remains a significant concern, with a considerable wealth gap separating the country's wealthiest from its poorest citizens. This economic disparity fuels social inequality, leading to divisions and tensions within Chilean society. Political polarization also poses a considerable challenge, as differing ideologies and beliefs can often lead to conflict and hinder progress. Environmental degradation, too, is a pressing issue. Chile's diverse ecosystems are under threat from deforestation, pollution, and climate change, putting the country's unique biodiversity at risk. Lastly, there is a growing demand for constitutional reform. Many Chileans are calling for a new constitution that better reflects the needs and aspirations of the country's diverse population. Despite these challenges, Chile continues to strive towards a more equitable and sustainable future.